Hi friends, it's Melanie. I wanted to take you today on a little bit of my health journey and just kind of walk you through some of the process and some of where I've come from, where I'm at now, and where I'm headed. So thanks so much for joining me, and I hope that you find this meaningful and maybe even helpful for you as well. So where did it all begin? Even as a little girl, I can remember having multiple ear infections, and it seemed like I came down with a cold faster than a lot of my siblings did, or that I was the first one sick. So there was obviously a little bit of something that was going on, and my mom was really good about feeding us really healthy food. We had all kinds of whole grains, and it was a very healthy diet, except for the fact that we didn't know that I had food allergies. So as I went through puberty, I struggled with a lot of headaches and hormone issues, and I also had a real low energy, and I was very melancholy for a lot of my teen years. And I know that you're probably saying, well, all teenagers are kind of melancholy, but I think it was a little more than it needed to be. And I guess it was when I was about 19, I started to notice that I had pain in my hands, and when I would get stressed and tense, then my hands would kind of curl up, and that's when Jesse and I met. I was just about to turn 20, and I remember he used to massage my hands and it would let go of so much tension, and I was so grateful for that, but I always wondered why my hands hurt so badly. And then as life moved on, we got married and the babies came quickly, and it was such a blessing, but I found with every pregnancy I grew more and more exhausted, and more than what you would consider normal. It's obvious that as you're a mom and you start adding kids, you're going to be more tired, especially when they're, a couple of years apart. But I was having pain in my legs. It would hurt for me to stand and do dishes, and I just didn't feel like I could do that anymore. I remember being almost in tears while I was at the sink just trying to get the dishes washed for the day, and small tasks would really wipe me out, and I would just feel so drained and like I was just kind of a skeleton. And then we had more babies and I got more tired, and it seemed like with every pregnancy I lost a little bit more energy and I hurt a little more, until the point where after I had Elkin, I also suffered with a lot of postpartum depression, and after Elkin everything kind of seemed to come to a head. That's when we moved out into the desert in a very harsh environment, and that was where when Jesse started working for the Border Patrol. And when he started, there was times that he worked a 21-hour day, and I was out there away from family, and there weren't a lot of comforts, and I didn't know a lot of people. And so very quickly that postpartum depression became very severe, very, very severe. And along with that came all of these health issues where I was just hurting more than ever before. I was putting on weight faster than I ever have. I finally got up to about 60 pounds overweight, which was really hard for me because I'm somebody that's always been quite thin. And I tried everything to lose it. And the more I exercised and the more that I tried to eat the whole grains and all of those things that are supposed to help, the sicker I got, the less energy I had, the harder I had to push. And it got to the point that if I took a walk with a friend for, a couple miles, it would wipe me out for a couple days. And we usually walked every other day, so I would walk with her one day, and then we would have I would have all of the rest of that day plus the next day that I wouldn't be doing anything but just recovering from that walk. And I was so desperate to get the weight off, so I was just eating, I wasn't even eating a full 1,000 calories. And I thought, at some point here, this has all got to click in, the weight's going to fall off and I'm going to start to feel better. And it got to the point where I didn't even know really who I was anymore. It was just like, I just felt like I lived in this daze, and I would see the kids wandering around the house and they would confuse me, and I would say, what's going on and what are they doing and why are they here? And it was very unsettling. And I would lay on the couch for hours and hours and hours while the house was just in shambles and the kids were hungry. And they would come to me, Mom, what can we eat? And my Ethan is he's such a sweetie pie. Ever since he was tiny, he's been looking after me. And he would notice I was hungry, or he would notice that the kiddos were hungry. And he'd jump in and he'd make them peanut butter sandwiches, or he'd cook them a little something. He'd pull together some hot dogs or something like that. So when I really hit rock bottom, my boy, who was at that point about 8 years old, was taking care of him and his 3 younger brothers, and they were doing all the household chores. But of course, you've got an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old trying to keep up on the house. It's not going to happen. And so the house was in shambles. Nobody was eating quality food. And I remember that hours and hours would pass by, and I wouldn't even know what had gone on, what happened during those hours that passed. I would just be in such a fog. And if I got up and tried to do anything, it was just so exhausting, and I would just feel faint and like I couldn't do it. And so then I would just go lay down because I didn't know what else to do. I just kept thinking, I'm going to rest and this is all going to be better. Until finally I realized it wasn't going away, but in fact was getting worse. And even when I was eating that tiny skeleton diet, I was still gaining weight. So there was obviously some kind of an imbalance in my body. So something tenacious rose up inside of me, and I said, I am not going to be a sick mama that lays around and has her kids taking care of themselves, who can't get up and run and play with them. And I remember so many times my oldest boy Ethan would say, Mom, can you come run with me? And I would say, no, I can't run. It hurts too much, or I'm too tired. And so this tenacity rose up inside of me, and I said, I will not live the rest of my kids growing up not being able to go run and play with them at the park, and not being able to take care of them, not being able to feed them healthy meals and make them treats. And I am not going to miss all of this. This is too important. And so that's when I just began researching everything I could get my hands on. So this was back in 2010, and there was just starting to be information around. I'd heard a little bit about some people that were eating gluten-free diets, and I thought it was all a farce. I thought, well, what is the point of that? I don't understand that. God made all these foods, they're healthy. It's all in your head. And I remember I said that a few times. And I had a couple friends that had what they'd been diagnosed with as fibromyalgia. And I remember hearing about that a few years earlier and thinking, well, I don't understand how you could have pain all over your entire body, so I guess that's all in your head as well. So both of these things, I said, well, there's no validity to either of those. And I began researching, and guess what? I discovered a connection between gluten and dairy and autoimmune hypothyroidism. And so I just started diving into information, every bit of new science that I could get my hands on that linked those two and what it meant. And it was like they were living in my brain and experiencing everything I was experiencing, all of that fog and the pain and the hurting and the emotional stress and the just the hormone imbalance and the weight gain, and the list went on and on, edema, it was all linked to this gluten allergy. And so I decided, well, if that's what it is, then I don't care what food I have to get rid of. I am going to live my life, and I'm going to be a strong mama, and I'm going to be around to go play with my babies and enjoy their growing up. So it was, I guess there was a doctor that was mentioned in the book that I was reading, and I noticed that she was in Arizona, which is where we were at the time. And so I said, I'm going to find that doctor, and I don't care what we have to do. I am going to get a hold of that doctor, and she's going to see me. And if we have to, scrimp and save, I'm going to see this, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. So it turns out that she ran a phone-based business, which was absolutely wonderful. So I was able to just call and do phone consultations with her, which was wonderful because traveling at that time was very, very hard for me. So we ran a whole bunch of tests through Cyrex Labs, and they were on the cutting edge of this whole science at the time. So they were able to test me through that lab. I only had to go and do one blood draw, and then I had to do a saliva test. And it was super simple. It was, the tests weren't super cheap, but for what it gave me, I found it to be very valuable. And it turns out that I was allergic to gluten, dairy, and about 75% of all the cross-reactive foods. And so that I went through a whole grieving process of, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. I don't know how I'm going to feed my family. This is all so strange and new. I used to love baking bread, and I had dreams of opening my own bakery. I used to bake pies and cakes and do cake decorating. And so it felt like part of me was dying. And it sounds kind of funny to say that about food, but then if somebody were to walk up to you today and say, well, you have to cut out, 50% of what you're eating, you probably have kind of the same reaction. And so I decided, all right, well, we're just going to do this. And I'm not the kind of person who does things where I just kind of dip my toe in and get a little bit wet. If I'm going to do something, I jump in with both feet, and I dive in, and I just swim for all that I'm worth. And so we did a big cleaning out the cupboards and kitchen. I threw away so much stuff, and I loaded so much stuff over to the neighbor's house, and I completely cleaned it all out. And I went shopping, and I bought only fruits, vegetables, pasture-raised and grass-fed meats, and there wasn't even any potatoes or rice or anything included in our elimination diet. And I said, that's it. And I loaded the cart up with every colorful thing I could get. And if there was 2 colors of one vegetable, I'd buy both of those. And my first shopping trip, I came home, and we have a really big dining table. And it was completely covered in vegetables. And it was a very new experience for me. Now, while we grew up eating a salad every night with dinner and living very healthfully, living without those fillers and those grains was something that was just so foreign. So I told my husband, I said, I feel like I need a cooking lesson. I don't even know how to cook with this stuff. But it was really amazing. We had 3 days that I don't even know how I lived through those days, because instead of getting better, I got worse. So with just sheer determination and absolute desperation, I managed to get us through that first 3 days. And the doctor that I had told me that all of the kids would have the same gene that would cause them to be allergic to these things, and that it was very important for their health to go ahead and take them off and do the diet with them. So they just jumped right in, and it was kind of a shock to take all of your kids that are used to eating Cheerios and hot dogs and corn dogs and, all the chicken nuggets, the things that are just kind of a standard American fare, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and cereal with milk in the morning, and then, you might have a roast chicken for dinner, but then to switch them to no grains and no starches, and okay kids, we're just going to eat vegetables, and no, you can't have a graham cracker for a snack, how about a carrot? And so that was really kind of a big deal, but we noticed that it was very quickly, and they were right on board, and they were excited about all the colors, and they were excited about the fruits and the veggies, and I cut up all kinds of snacks for us. And pretty soon I had energy to do the cooking I needed, and pretty soon the weight started to fall off of me, and it really fell off of me. In that first month I dropped 22 pounds, and the only thing that I did was cook and eat. I cooked and I ate, and I cooked and I ate, and I ate and I ate, and I cooked and I ate. And I lost 22 pounds, and my brain started to clear up, and it was just kind of incredible. At that point, I still didn't have a lot of energy for much more than just making sure that everybody was eating well. But I knew that that was the key to pulling us out of this. And at the time, the kids were quite small, and they had a couple issues. We had one that was showing a lot of really severe ADHD symptoms, where he was just, would have this unbelievable crazy energy. And he really mellowed a whole bunch and became much more friendly and easier to handle within the house. And then Owen, my third boy, was having really severe leg pains. He was only 3 years old, and 4. He was only 4, and he didn't want to run, and he didn't want to play. He didn't even want to go outside and walk. So we knew there was something really going on with that little guy. And that cleared up within the first week of being on this diet. And it's not something he has ever suffered with since. He has all kinds of energy, and you can hardly drag him back in the house. He just wants to be outside and wants to play, wants to run, wants to ride his bike. So that's been just miraculous. I can't imagine what would have happened if we would have continued on, the path with the poor food choices that we were making. So anyway, we just continued to eat that way for 3 months. And then the kids seemed like they were starting to get hungrier and hungrier, and I think it's because they really started to grow and thrive. So I called up the doctor that I was working with, and I said, would it be okay if I added some rice in for the boys, because I cannot fill them up. So we, at that point, added rice in, and everybody did quite well with it. I still had some recovery to do, and so I didn't tolerate it as well as the boys did. But I was able to give them rice cakes and puffed rice, and feed them rice for some dinners, and then we were able to add back in potatoes, and life really started to kind of normalize at that point. And I just continued to dive in and research and find out everything I could find out about food and its connection to us, and that's when I learned about GMOs and all of the harm that they can cause. And I learned about the importance of eating organic food so that you can avoid them. But as all of that happened, then our food bill started to go up. And we really felt like it was necessary, so we just did what we needed to do, and we're grateful that my husband had a salary that could cover all the stuff that we were doing. And that's when I really became like a food hound. I would just go out and search out the best deals, and I would shop around, and I would buy from local people, and I would find, grass-fed beef ranchers that I could buy directly from. And so I really started learning how to shop the deals. And a lot of times that meant buying in case lots. So then I would bring home a case of something, and there's no way that we could eat through it fast enough. And so then I started learning about food preservation, and started canning. And all of that just kind of pushed us into this homesteading journey. So we were super grateful for my husband having an income that I could learn all of this on without having to stay within a super tight budget. Now, do I think that you have to have a big extravagant budget to be able to do this? No, I don't. I think there are enough resources now, and there's enough places that the food is available that no, you don't have to have a really big budget to make it happen. It is a little more costly, and you do have to be more creative than maybe with conventional food, but it is really doable. But we felt like we wanted more freedom than what we have now, or what we had at that point. So that's when we decided we want to grow our own food, we want to preserve a bunch of it, we want to be in a place where we can go glean potatoes and we can go glean apples from other people's apple orchards. And so moving here to Idaho was huge for us. And in Arizona, where we were at, we really struggled with the sun and just the very, very, very intense heat. And that was something that would cause my fibro to flare quite a bit. And so we felt like Idaho was gonna kind of be the promised land for us. And we just jumped right into gardening, and it was just kind of incredible. You know, I worked harder that summer than I had any year prior, and I had enough energy to make it all happen. It was a big deal, and I worked really hard, but I made it, and that was just monumental for me. We kind of got here a little late in the gardening season, so our garden that year was kind of small, but then last year we were just able to throw our whole heart into it and produce a ton of food, and it was so nurturing and nourishing to our bodies. It was just amazing, you know, to spend all that time out in the sun and in the dirt, and being able to produce things with your own hands is just an incredible experience. And over, you know, the course of these 5 years, I've gotten better every single year. I am just on an upward trend, and it's just been really such a blessing. So we're looking forward to our gardening season this year, and all that we're going to do, we're expanding it, and we're adding in pigs, and we have our chickens, and we're growing new chickens. So it's all really exciting, and not something that I even considered would be a possibility for me 5 years ago. So we're feeling really hopeful about our future and the health of our family and all the things that we have in store for this year. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions about everything that I've come through, and I know this is just the tip of the iceberg. So leave your comments and questions below, and I will try to continue this video series and just kind of walking you guys through the things that we've gone through. So if you would like to learn more about our elimination diet and how that works and what foods we ate and didn't eat, of course stay tuned for more cooking videos, because you know that's what we eat. And we look forward to hearing where you guys are at in your journey and what things you guys have overcome. That's always so encouraging. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll talk to you later.
When the X isn't sufficient. Play something fun.